Well, for much more on Nvidia, Nvidia being one of the most valuable companies by market cap in the world, but it uses a whole lot of jargon. To break down exactly what they're even talking about, we've got Yahoo Finance's very own Julie Hyman here. Hey, Julie.
Hey, Brad. Thank you. Indeed, what Nvidia does is highly technical. And so even though CEO Jensen Huang, in my conversation with he and our Dan Howley last night, he does tend to explain things well, but still there are some terms that might confound you. So that's why I'm here to help. So first of all, there's the graphics processing unit. This is the bread and butter of what Nvidia does. What is a graphics processing unit? It's a type of computer chip or semiconductor. Those terms used pretty much interchangeably. And it's capable of rendering graphics for display on an electronic device. Sounds pretty simple, right? GPUs are used for all kinds of stuff. They're used for video games. That's one of the first use cases and one of the bigger use cases in the past for Nvidia's chips, for example. Not to be confused with CPUs, central processing units, which are mostly used in computers, for example. So CPUs versus GPUs. The kind of GPU now that Nvidia is going to be introducing later this year is called Blackwell. Now, Blackwell was introduced at Nvidia's GTC conference this spring. And what is Blackwell exactly? Well, Nvidia calls it the world's most powerful chip. And I am no tech expert, but from what I've gleaned about this Blackwell chip, it's actually two chips that are sort of connected, and it has 4 times as much speed as does Hopper, which is the generation of chip that is out from Nvidia right now. So it's faster, has more compute power, and that's really the big selling point here. I should also mention Blackwell isn't just a chip sort of in isolation like the recent generations of Nvidia's products. It's the chip on a rack that sits in a data center. So it's the rack itself that Nvidia also sells, along with software to sort of run all of these chips together to help them compute, especially with generative AI. This Blackwell system also has a higher energy efficiency than its predecessors. So meaning when you're in a data center using an enormous amount of power, as we've talked frequently about, you want a chip that is going to be more energy efficient. And then finally, the other thing is in those data centers, it is hot, people. You are talking about chips, again, that are using an enormous amount of energy. There are different ways to cool those racks that sit in the data centers. You can cool them with air. You can actually cool them with water that runs on pipes through those racks. There are different ways. Some chips in the past could only be used with a specific type of cooling system. Blackwell is cooling system agnostic. So these are the various ways that it is different from past chips. I should also mention, it being a newer generation chip, it's also going to be more expensive. And then another term, or two terms you might have heard a lot about it when we're talking about generative AI specifically, is training versus inference. What are we talking about there? Well, training is when the AI model reviews a lot of different material, text, video, images, as it learns. As it learns, what search results it's going to give you, whatever the task it's being given. And then inference is then when it actually starts to work. It is making inferences, it's making predictions, it's analyzing based on what it has learned. Now, some of the thinking going into this earnings report had been that Nvidia's chips were very good for training, but they were maybe a little more than you needed for the inferencing part. Training is where you need more power. These are more expensive chips than some of their competitors. Jensen Huang sort of pushed back against that and said, indeed, Nvidia chips are being used for inferencing. And here's what he told us last night.
Inferencing, as you know, is about generation of information, generative AI. And so whenever you're talking to ChatGPT and it's generating information for you or drawing a picture for you or recognizing something and then drawing something for you, that generation is a brand new inferencing technology, is really, really complicated and requires a lot of performance.
And again, he emphasized that those NVIDIA chips are indeed being used for inferencing. We'll see how the whole landscape is going to look going forward, but just a few terms to get you started here, Brad.